All right, yeah, let's talk about that 5 a.m. advisory. So it just came out moments ago and I did go through it, but let's go over this again. Maximum sustained winds are at 160 miles per hour. So since 2 a.m., that hasn't changed, unfortunately, because this is a Category 5. Also, the speed increased about 2 miles since the last advisory. So now at 14 miles per hour with that forward motion towards the northeast direction towards the west coast of Florida. That distance roughly 300 miles southwest of Tampa. So it is getting closer and closer to the west coast of Florida. Here's a look at that forecast cone. I want to point out the forecast cone didn't change. If anything, if it did, it was very subtle, but it looks just about the same. It looks like that center of the cone right over Sarasota. But of course, there's still some uncertainty. This will narrow down the closer and closer we get to landfall. Landfall is 2 a.m. So in less than 24 hours. But yeah, it's not until 2 a.m. And notice also another thing when it exits the Atlantic or brushes the Atlantic coast. This is at 2 p.m. Thursday. So now those impacts being prolonged from an overnight event starting overnight, then across the state still going into the late morning Thursday, early afternoon hours. So it's going to be a long night and a morning for many of us in Florida, to say the least. But eventually it will exit the Atlantic and eventually downgrading. So as it cuts across the state, it will weaken somewhat, but this is going to be a very powerful hurricane. By the time it gets into central Florida, it could potentially still be either a Cat 3 or Cat 2 because it's making that landfall as a Category 4. All right, here's a look at those warnings. They're still just about the same. We're going to take a close up here. The warnings, hurricane warnings, that is, for Okeechobee, Indian River County, St. Lucie County, still in effect. And of course, for offshore waters. And we got in the blues, the tropical storm warnings for Martin County and also Palm Beach County. Palm Beach County, the peak winds being overnight into the morning hours, 45 to 65 miles per hour, 50 to 70 mile per hour wind speeds in Martin County. Rain amounts will be a little higher the further north you go, 2 to 3 inches St. Lucie County with winds up to 75 miles per hour, up to 80 in Indian River County and up to 80 also for Okeechobee County. All right, so starting today, we are dealing with that threat of tornadoes, especially as those rain bands come in. And so far on the Viper, we're pretty quiet. We are getting rounds of rain. I'm going to send it off to Francis because you have a closer look at that threat for tornadoes.
Yes, and we've been watching some activity towards the Miami area, but I do want to break down that tornado threat for today. Really, mainly, we're looking at that window. Most of it occurring later tonight near dinner time into the midnight or even 2 o'clock time frame. But as far as for today, we're just highlighted here in the elevated and as well as an enhanced risk for seeing some of that tornadic activity. So I would not rule out some isolated spin ups occurring later today. I understand we are going to deal with those outer rain bands, but we are going to have some breaks between the rain bands too. But as of right now, we were keeping a close eye on this cell that's near the Homestead area of Miami, and so that system continues to lift northward, and we're going to focus a lot of what's happening over towards Fort Myers, Naples, and also what's occurring in Miami, because a lot of that activity is going to continue to lift northward, and that's what we could potentially expect to see here at home. But getting back into those winds, look at that wind field that has increased to 125 miles per hour for tropical storm force winds. We're likely going to start to see that impact along the west coast about 1, 2 o'clock this afternoon, and then we'll see our winds here at home start to pick up closer towards about 3, 4 o'clock this afternoon. But we're going to see the tropical storm force winds truly by later tonight into early tomorrow morning. Hurricane force winds are expected throughout Indian River County, Okeechobee, and as well as St. Lucie counties. And then finally looking at the system exiting and those winds finally dying down by late Thursday into Friday morning.